blessed to have Sheikh Mohammad Badawy visiting from Brooklyn. Sheikh Mohammad Badawy is the resident Sheikh at Mass Youth Center in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. He studied in Saudi Arabia at the University in Mecca, and he also holds a bachelor's in health science and nutrition from Brooklyn College. He completed degrees in applied sciences and the Arabic language, and he serves many communities here in New York City. Before we get started with today's talk, just quick announcements. We hope you enjoyed the last 10 nights program here at Mass Queens. Eid is announced to be on Wednesday, and we'll pray at Astoria Park with Dr. Nabil, who will be leading the first prayer, and Brother Muhammad Haq, who will be leading the second prayer. And April 27th, set your calendars for Sheikh Muhammad El-Shanawi, who will be visiting us. We've been trying to put this on for a long time, and we're excited to have him visit us on April 27th with the topic of the development of the four madahib. And so, inshallah, let's get started with today's talk. The topic is navigating the afterlife, a reflection on the post-death journey. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Bismillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ترحم على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما ترحمت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم تحنن على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما تحننت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم سلم على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما سلمت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم صل على محمد كما أمرتنا أن نصلي عليه. اللهم صل على محمد كما هو أهله. اللهم صل على محمد كما تحب وترضى له. اللهم صل على محمد كما تنبغي الصلاة عليه. اللهم صل على روح محمد في الأرواح، وصل على جسد محمد في الأجساد، وصل على قبر محمد في القبور. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على سيدنا محمد السابق للخلق نوره، والرحمة للعالمين ظهوره، عدد من مضى من خلقك ومن بقي، ومن سعد منهم ومن شقي. صلاة تستغرق العد وتحيط بالحد، صلاة لا غاية لها ولا انتهاء ولا أمد لها ولا انقضاء، صلاة دائمة بدوامك وعلى آله وصحبه كذلك، والحمد لله على ذلك. جزاك الله خير. Perfect timing. We begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Him to send His finest, choicest, purest, finest peace and blessings upon His dear beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, our leader, our teacher, our role model, and his wives and his family members and his companions and all those who choose to follow their legacy until the Day of Judgment. Begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these final closing moments of this blessed season to bestow His favor and His mercy and His pardon and His grace upon all of us and include us in the legacy of our great role models. Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khairan for having me. It's always an honor to be back here with the blessed Lord, brothers and sisters, worshiping together, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together. It's a huge blessing, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts it from all of us and reminds us of it on the Day of Judgment as we enter Jannah together. Allahumma ameen. A little bit of a bleak topic, but a necessary one. Right? The road to salvation or to connecting with our Creator cannot be done without contemplating, preparing, connecting to, and constantly remembering death. This is very clear in our tradition, as we'll explore together in the next few minutes. But I want to ask you a question first. What happens when we die? If you had to say it in a sentence. What happens when we die? Yeah.
The afterlife begins.
The afterlife begins. I love it. Any other one-sentence answers? Your book is closed. No more actions. Anything else? Some random person stop to say, give me the one sentence of what happens after we die in Islam. Shona. Yeah. Okay. Your life in the grave begins. I love all these answers. Excellent. So, the Prophet ﷺ was asked by a group of travelers. They had stopped by and they were no Muslims, and they asked him, ﷺ, tell us about the afterlife. Tell us about the Day of Judgment. Tell us about the hereafter. So these are people who don't have a lot of time. They're passing by. They have a quick question. So he has to make an impact. So he ﷺ had to give them that one sentence. So he points to the smallest of them. He points to a child that they had with them. And he tells them ﷺ, لَنْ يُدْرِكَ هَذَا الْهَرَمْ حَتَّى تَأْتِيَكُمْ سَاعَتُكُمْ. This one will not reach old age. He won't become senile. He won't become exceedingly old before each one of you already faces your judgment. Each one of you's day of judgment will begin. By the time that this one is well along in age, developed into his 70s or 80s, all of you, grown men, definitely be dead by then. So your day of judgment, your hour would have already begun. So it's very strong wording. He would say, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let each one of you know that your death, your hereafter, the day of judgment, Jannah and Nar, is closer to you than your shoelaces. It's a concept that is very close to you. And if you think about why he would say that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how close is the day of judgment? If you want to put it on in terms of time, for each one of us, it's as close as our individual deaths, which is a timer that is constantly ticking less. Less years. How many years do you have left? It's less than last year for sure by 1 year. Days, minutes, heartbeats, breaths. And when that timer hits zero, when that counter hits the last breath, there will be no extra. There's not a single moment extra. There's not another birthday. There's not one more, wait guys, do this. My bank account in that over there, the hidden stash. There's not a single moment of advice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. لا يستطيعون توصية. They can't even say, oh, by the way, it's over. So the time is short for each individual. That their judgment, if I would put into a sentence, what begins, what happens when you die, your judgment begins. The afterlife begins, as you said. It all comes to conclusion. The conclusion begins, right? The next phase. Because we know from the Quran and Sunnah that we live in phases. In around 5 phases, right? There's pre-existence, before you were alive here. You were in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you were a soul somewhere that He created, but you didn't begin your journey. You had no perception, you have no memory. Then you were born here. For how long? How long are you here for? I mean, sure. Just kind of looking for a number.
A day or two?
I mean, if you want to get philosophical and metaphorical about it, no, I'm asking for real though. Like, there's no tricks in the question. Just how long will you be here? Vanilla, like, I'm not trying to do anything with it. Life expectancy is like 70 to 75. That's kind of what I was going for, the most obvious answer. Well, it's okay. It's late at night. You guys have been worshiping. You were here in this life for max. That's the maximum. Very few people pass that. In fact, most people die slightly before that. Late 60s, 70s, early 70s is like the standard expectancy, with very few people passing that. So that's here. So pre-existence, how long was that? How long passed before this moment? 2024, 29th Ramadan, you guys hanging out with Muhammad. How much passed before this? Eons. No one even knows. According to recorded history, tens of thousands of years ago we have, but then before that, we don't know. So then life here, maximum 70 to 75. Next, after you die, where do you go? The barzakh, right? The temporary station between this world and the day of judgment, eternity. How long do you stay there? To the day of judgment, again, I want a number. How long do you think you're going to stay there? We don't know the number, right? But let me ask you this instead. This is a better question. What are the chances that your time there is going to be longer than your life was here? For the vast majority of mankind, 99.999%, that will be way longer. Their life in this intermission between this, what we see and know now, and the day of judgment is likely multitudes more than that 60 to 70 years, right or wrong? What happens after the barzakh? What's the next station? Where do we come out of the barzakh into? Who woke us up from the slumber, they will say? To this evil day, to these evil occurrences. It's the day of judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah. How long is that? 50,000 years. Multitudes even more longer now than anything you've ever experienced. What's after the day of judgment? After those 50,000 years that people will experience, is Jannah or not for eternity. So we have these 5 stations of life. The one that we're in now is the absolute shortest. Is the absolute least significant in terms of stability. but is the proving ground for all of it. And yet, if you looked at us as people, you would see that we give this station the most time, the most effort. How can I be comfortable here? How can I be safe here? How can I be happy here? I'm focused on here as if this is it. But everything that I just went through, without even going through the hadith or the ayat, just a quick breakdown together from what we already know, that it's not all about here. It's not all about here. So, accordingly, he said that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أَكْثِرُ مِنْ ذِكْرِ هَذَا الْلَذَّاتِ. Increase in remembering and reminding each other and speaking about and mentioning the destroyer of all pleasures. Because those pleasures will distract you into thinking that here and now is what it's all about. The glitter will razzle and dazzle you beyond seeing what actually matters. So he said, remember the thing that will end all of the here and now, because here and now is not what it's all about, and that thing is death. That's what will cut off the family ties, that's what will end the friendships, that's what will break the continuity of the income. None of it belongs to you anymore. It all ends with that moment. Even your own body, right? They don't say bring Muhammad anymore, they say bring the body. Muhammad doesn't exist anymore. He disappears at that moment that the light goes out, and they say now bring the body. And Muhammad becomes a memory. So that reminder is so sombering, it's so humbling, it's so strong to bring you back if you are listening intently and sincerely. So he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, remember it much. What will that do for you? What will it do for you if you remember it all the time? He went out to a janazah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he cried over it as they were burying it, and he said, لِمِثْلِ هَذَا فَأَعِدُّ يَا إِخْوَانِي. Oh my brothers, for this day, for something like this is the event, this is the journey, this is the experience that you should be prepping for. Salman al-Farsi, when it came time for him to die, he was crying, and he said, the Prophet ﷺ, ahida ilayna, we made a pact with him that we would only ever have that what we needed. And when he died, ﷺ, he had a bowl to eat with, and a bowl to clean with, and one more for other food or drink storage. He had 3 bowls, and here I am on my deathbed surrounded by stuff. He was a governor. And he felt ashamed. He said, what am I going to tell him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? I made an oath and a pact that I would never live for this worldly life. And this room is full of my stuff. How can I answer for that? It's not why we're here. And we made a pact about that. So he's remembering it. Even though it's not haram to have stuff, but that's how much in tune they were with the fact that here and now is not what it's all about. Al-Qurtubi says that remembering death and going over these narratives is important. It will lead you to a couple of benefits. One of them, it will lessen your hopes in the dunya. You won't have high hopes for this worldly life. The Prophet ﷺ, he drew a box in the ground, in the sand like this. And in the center of that box, he started a line that extended outside of the box. So we have a box here, and a line that goes from the center, and it reaches outside. The center point, the dot in the middle of the box, he said, هَذَا الْإِنسان, this is man. And the box, the parameter of the box, the perimeter of the box, he said, هَذَا أَجْلُ, this is his lifespan. This is his appointment. 62 years and 3 months. And weeks and days and breaths and heartbeats. Once he hits that number, he cannot escape that box. Once that number is achieved, the age of death will be there. What's the line that extends outside of it? What's the line that goes from man and reaches outside? What do you think that is? What extends from man past his death? No? So that's in our tradition of good deeds, things that continue after you die. But what he said here is that line that's coming out, he said, هَذَا أَمَلُ. That's his hopes and his dreams in the dunya. He still wanted to collect more. He still wanted to save more. He had his eyes on another house, or another family, or another business, or another whatever. Another business venture, another movement. Hey, people are ambitious, man. When they get old, they start tripping sometimes. That happens. They start having dunya dreams, as if they're still young, hustling and bustling, and have their lives ahead of them. Well, when you read about the righteous generations from the time of the Sahaba onwards, some of them, was reported about them, they'd wrap up life at 40. Once they'd hit 40, they'd say, okay, it's been great having a business and doing worldly worship till I die. And some of them would do it at 50, and some of them would do it at 60. But they would say, at this point, whatever I eat, whatever, I've had my fill of food in my life. I'm done with food for now. In terms of like vacations and enjoyment, I've done that. Now I'm getting ready to wrap it up. I'm on the doorstep of the next phase that's going to last much longer and is dependent on how I handle this one. So I need to conclude it properly. Because our Prophet ﷺ told us, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ, actions are judged by their conclusions. What's that last chapter going to be like? How do I want to conclude this letter that I'm sending Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I started all those decades ago and I only have maybe a couple left? What's that last summary, that last conclusion statement of how I went out? What did I serve Him with? What did I present with Him on my way as I was walking towards Him subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's how they viewed things and that's how they acted. So the first benefit Qurtubi says is lessen your hopes in the dunya. You get it, you don't get it, you won't be daunted, you won't be phased, you won't be derailed, you won't be sidetracked. He said it will increase your generosity. You're going to give more. You won't say, I need this for the new pair of that or the new size of this. You will say, this is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ slaughtered a sheep and he told Aisha, give some of it in charity. And he went out about his business. And when he came back, he asked her, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what did you do with the animal? And she said, I gave away everything except the shoulder. Because she knew that the shoulder was his favorite piece, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. She said, all of it is gone, ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, except the shoulder. And he told her, that's not true. All of it remains except the shoulder. We keep everything that you gave away for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That will be ours forever. But what you kept here, we will eat. And it will break down and it will become waste, never to be seen again, never to be benefited from again. But what you gave away will be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forever and we will meet it. He said the next benefit of remembering death, often it will lessen your miserliness. You'll be less cheap with your time, you'll be less cheap with your emotions, if it means good, if it means bettering others, if it means any type of positivity. He said it will soften your heart. You won't hear a reminder of see people with misfortune and laugh, or make it the butt of a joke. You will see signs in everything as opposed to seeing sarcasm in everything. As very often we see occurs with people. That's a sign of hardened hearts. While the Sahaba, they would walk around, the Prophet ﷺ would walk around, they'd see reminders everywhere, in everything. Ibn Mas'ud would stop by the blacksmith daily on his way to and fro from wherever he was going. And he'd watch the molten iron melt as they were pumping the bellows, and he would just stand there and cry. Remembering the hellfire, remembering the severity of the flame. It was narrated that one time in their journeys, the candle was tipped over and it went completely knocked out and it went completely black. And they all scurried, and when they finally relit it, they found Abdullah ibn Mubarak, his face was soaked in tears. He's not afraid of the dark, but he remembered the darkness of the Day of Judgment. The scramble and the scurrying and the stress of trying to find out where you go. What do you do? Their hearts were in tune because they remembered death all the time. Because they weren't weighed down by pleasures and luxuries and amenities. Because they had their spirits in tune with the right thing. It will raise your aspirations, he said. You're going to only aim for the loftiest of things. You'll be patient. You'll have integrity. You won't indulge in questionable matters while people around you do. Because you're constantly thinking, I don't want this to be my conclusionary action. I don't want to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this, whether it's the last action or in my scroll of deeds period. That will enable you to think like that because you remember death often. He said it will help you hasten to repentance. You make a mistake, you'll bounce right back. You won't dive in, you won't indulge, you won't be a contrarian and try to find ways out of it, try to contort the evidences, try to bend the narrative. You will hurry to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala once you make a mistake. And finally he said, it will make you eager for good deeds. You'll realize that you can never settle. You'll realize that there's never enough amount of good deeds, there's never enough of an appeal to the mercy of your Creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them, قُلْ يَتَوَفَّاكُمْ مَلَكُ الْمَوْتِ الَّذِي وُكِّلَ بِكُمْ. Tell them, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the angel of death will take your souls the way that he was tasked to do. That's his job. An angel created with the sole purpose of wrapping it up. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this, the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, they said, what about other things? And they kind of got scared. They said, he's tasked just with us, that's his job. Other things die too, right? Jinn, animals. But this one's, it's only his job to take our souls, to kill us. What about other things? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every living thing, every soul that harnesses life will drink from the cup of death. You have a terminal illness called life. Everything that lives must die. كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. Every single existing thing on it, he said, subhanahu wa ta'ala, will vanish, will fade. It will disintegrate, it will cease to exist. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. And nothing will remain except the face of your Lord, full of honor, bestowing honor and majesty. That he will call out to an empty universe. لِمَنِ الْمُلْكُ الْيَوْمِ. To whom does dominion belong today? Where are the kings? Where are the presidents? Where are the dignitaries? Where is the ambassadors? Where is every single leader, every single owner of property or authority or a title? Where are you today? Where is what you own? Where are the powers that you command? Where is your authority? What can you do? And there will be no response. The response will come from Him Himself. لِلَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ. It all belongs to Allah. It only ever, always belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one, the irresistible, the overwhelming. He said, every soul will taste from that cup of death. Then he said, وَإِنَّمَا تُوَفَّوْنَ أُجُورَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَقَدْ فَازَ وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. Every soul shall taste death, and you will be paid in fully on the day of resurrection. And whoever is brought away from the fire and admitted into Jannah will have triumphed, and the present world is only an illusory pleasure. It's an illusion. It's not real. Don't be distracted. Snap out of it using the alarm clock of death. And perhaps the longest narrative of what happens after we die from our tradition in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we'll end with this, it's a long hadith, is, oh, did I mess up the angle? Alright, sorry. Is the hadith of Bara ibn Azib, where he says, كنا في جنازة في بقيع الغرقد مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقعد وقعدنا حوله كأن على رؤوسنا الطير وهو يلحد. He said, we went with the Prophet ﷺ to a janazah in al-Baqi' al-Medina, and we followed the Prophet ﷺ until it was buried and it was brought into its niche as it's dug inside, and he sat ﷺ in front of it after it was buried, and he stayed quiet. And he said, Bara ibn Azib says, and we sat around him ﷺ silently, as if there were birds on our heads. No one said, oh Rasulullah, are you going to say something? Are we going to go? Are we going to say? Everyone just sat. He sat and they sat as well. And he said, we were so silent, it was as if there was birds on our heads, like statues. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تُقَدِّمُوا بَيْنَ يَدَيِ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. O people of faith, do not proceed ahead of Allah and His Messenger. Don't jump the gun. Your role is always behind, is always to follow, is always to hear and to obey. And a lot of the Sahaba took that so seriously that they just followed everything that he ever did. They never even suggested things. He would ask, what day is it today? They say, Allah and His Messenger know best. It's not because they didn't have a calendar. They knew today was Monday or the Hijjah, but they said, what is he going to say? He's asking for a reason, and we'll wait to see what that reason is before we even say what day it is today. That was the amount of devotion and submission and conviction they had that this man was speaking on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for their own benefit. So he said he sat silently, and he had a stick with which he was scratching the dust with. And he looked up to the heavens and then back down to the ground, and he did that 3 or 4 times. And then he told them, ask Allah for protection from punishment of the grave. And he repeated that a couple of times as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us from the punishment of the grave. And then he himself said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, A'udhu billahi min adhab al-qabr, I seek refuge with Allah from punishment of the grave. He himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is asking Allah for protection 3 times for punishment from the grave. Then he said, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِذَا كَانَ فِي إِقْبَالٍ مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ وَانْقِطَاعٍ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا نَزَلَتْ إِلَيْهِ الْمَلَائِكَةِ كَأَنَّ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمُ الشَّمْسِ مَعَهُمْ كَفَنٌ مِنْ أَكْفَانِ الْجَنَّةِ وَحَنُوطٌ مِنْ حَنُوطِ الْجَنَّةِ. When the believing soul, when it comes to the point of their separation from this worldly life and their entrance into the hereafter, those are the words he used. That's what death is. It's a change of phases. It's you going through a portal, exiting this worldly life and entering the next phase, as we were saying. And it's a predetermined roller coaster track. You don't choose to go left or to right. You don't choose to decrease or increase the speed. You don't choose to get on or get off. It's a set course that you have no choice to do anything beforehand. The deeds start coming to life now, in terms of their effect and their reward and their punishment. So when that person comes to that point, he says that it's a believing soul. The angels descend upon him or her, as if their faces are the sun, bright, radiant, pleasing to look at. They have with them a cloth from the cloths of paradise and a fragrance from the fragrances of paradise. And they sit around him or her, he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as far as the eyes can see. Could be in a small hospital room, could be buried under the rubble in Gaza, could be anywhere in a morgue. But to them, as far as the horizon, is angels with the faces like the sun. The most reassuring thing you can imagine at the ultimate moment of loneliness and fear, trepidation and uncertainty. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as far as the horizon goes, angels with these bright faces. ثُمَّ يَجِئُ مَلَكُ الْمَوْتِ, then the angel of death himself comes. And he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he comes with a good appearance, a pleasing appearance. Despite that, there's another hadith that tells us that the initial sight of the angel of death is more severe than 100 strikes of the sword. The fear that it causes, the uncertainty, the anxiety, the stress. Just that moment of encountering it. Even Musa ﷺ struck him out of fear. The prophets don't know where they're going. They're not sure of their deeds. They're not sure of their forgiveness. It's a human thing. You're going to the next phase. Everything you know is about to be over. And the next time you blink, the next time you see, the next time you react, will be a whole new realm. Who wouldn't be terrified? But this narrative, these traditions, is what gives you strength. Is what gives you fortification. Is what gives you company in the loneliest time of your existence. So he says they descend on this person as far as the eye can see. The angel of death himself comes, he sits at his head, and he says, Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna, O reassured, tranquil, peaceful soul. اخرجي إلى مغفرة من الله ورضوان. Exit to pleasure from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Forgiveness, satisfaction. This is the invitation. This is where you're going next. This is the next stop. فتخرج تسيل كما تسيل القطرة من في السقاء. So he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that soul exits the body. Death happens. And it flows out of that body in the way that a drop of water would drip from a jug. Seamless, smooth, painless, quick, easy. And he doesn't hold it for a split second. The angels of death's only job is extraction. Once he extracts it, his job is done to cause death of the living things. And he hands it over to these angels that now surrounded the soul. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they place it in this cloth of Jannah. They place onto it this perfume from Jannah. They beautify it. It's a present that's going to be presented to its Lord now. So they beautify it and they make it clean and perfumed. And he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as it's placed into this cloth, a smell emanates from it, purer than any musk on the face of this planet. It's a pure soul. This body, its purity or its scent emanates from how much you scrub, how much you apply, but the soul in and of itself emanates a fragrance. It's not because what they put on it from Jannah. In and of itself, it's so pure. Those good deeds have been saturated, have been drinking and soaking in it for decades. Your qiyam and your siyam and your attendance of the masjid and your perseverance upon the truth and your patience in the face of ridicule, all of that soaked into your soul now. It's a pure, supernatural, otherworldly flower that is finally blossoming in the next world. That's what's happening here. That's the moment of death for the righteous. And they ascend with it. He said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فلا يمرون بها يعني على ملأ من الملائكة إلا قالوا ما هذه الروح الطيبة فيقولون فلان ابن فلان بأحسن أسمائه التي كانوا يسمونه بها في الدنيا. They pass by and they don't pass by any group of angels. How many angels are there in heaven? How many angels are there from here to Mars and beyond the galaxy, and climbing up all the way throughout the creations as the layers that Allah created? The billions and hundreds of trillions of light years, the unimaginable astronomical numbers that go beyond just what we observe, to the heavens that Allah created, as He described to us through His Prophet ﷺ, beyond our wildest dreams. And that entire distance that we can't even fathom how big it is. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's not a handspan or a footprint in the heavens or the earth except there's an angel in qiyam standing in prayer or in ruku' or in sujood. Every single foot filled with unimaginable numbers of angels. So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they pass by these gatherings. And there's not a single one of these gatherings that they pass by except that angels ask, who is this person? Where is this smell coming from? Everyone's just coming to check it out. It's like a celebrity coming into the heavens now, passing by, moving up. Everyone just wants to get that selfie with them. Everyone wants to ask. The angels stop the worship to say, who is this person? Why does it smell so good? And the angels carrying that person, they say, this is so-and-so, by name. This is Sarah. This is Muhammad. This is Ahmed. This is Ayyub. This is Badis. This is Khadija. This is all of you, inshallah. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they gave them the most beautiful names that they were known by in the dunya, the qualities that they had. This is so-and-so, the masjid goer. He was attached to the masjid, he loved them. This was so-and-so, the honest, she never told a lie, even when the pressure ramped up, even when it cost her a job. This is so-and-so, he stuck to his prayers, even when it cost him that promotion, because they said he takes too much time off. This is so-and-so, she persevered through so much ridicule and hardship, she still pushed through, believing Allah was on her side. They give him these titles, and that begs the question, who you really are. Over here I have a name, I have a title. I can start the event with this bio and they'll do it. But who am I for real in the heavens? I'll find out on that day. When I ascend up and I hear these descriptions, that's who you really are. That's an objective attestation that cannot be changed, that cannot be diminished from, that cannot be contested. Because the angels don't lie. Because the angels know who we really are. Because the angels only praise, are only attached, are only attracted to that which is the purest of the pure. So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they mention it by name, حَتَّى يَنْتَهُ بِهَا إِلَى السَّمَاءِ, till they get to the final end of this worldly life. The end of the heavens of this world, the skies where they end. Then the next step is the second heaven. So this entire distance that we know, everything we see, that's all the confines of the first heaven. We can't even access or see the second, let alone all the way up to the seventh. And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that each level you compare to the one before is like a ring in a desert. If I was in a helicopter and threw this off into the Sahara, would I ever find it? Never, right? Any desert. So he said that's the first heaven to the second. And if you compare the second now to the third, it's like another ring in another desert. So what about the first to the third? Right? There's no point even bothering at this point. Let alone going up to the seventh. And he said the seventh to the throne of Allah is like a ring in a desert. Conclusion, we are extremely small. We are atoms. We are absolutely not the biggest thing to ever happen. We're not front page news all the time. We're not the main character. Sorry guys. Sometimes you may be, but very temporarily in a very limited scope, but the general idea is no, you're not. You're not even a character. But to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what you did is still significant. That's love. That's compassion. That's gratitude from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most appreciative, even though He is the furthest from benefit. But He is the most appreciative, that's just simply who He is. He said when they get to that point, the end of the heaven, and they seek for it to be opened, a question is asked, who is it? And He is named, and then the gates of the heavens are opened, and they pass by the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, until they get to the seventh heaven, all the way to the end of all creation. What will that look like? What sights will you see? How long will that take? What will that experience be? Something to wonder about. Just you and the angels by your side. No human being anywhere in sight. Human beings are a distant memory at this point. But it's definitely something to think about. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it satisfactory to Him. Allahumma ameen. So when they get to the final confines of the seventh heaven now, and other scholars, they mention that at each of these levels, this person's righteousness is mentioned, that they are able to access these heavens. When people say, like, what is this human being doing here? The angels say, why is this human here? And then the other angels carry them, they say, he got here, she got here through their honesty, through their salah, through their zakat, through their fasting in Ramadan, through their sincerity. Every single station, every single heaven is unlocked by your good deeds, by your righteousness. So the angels, they question your presence, and when they hear those good deeds, they say, okay, that makes sense. They accept your presence here, you belong here, it makes sense that you're here now. Until they get to that final ceiling, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announces, اكتبوا كتاب عبدي في عليين وأعيدوه إلى الأرض فإني منها خلقتهم وفيها أعيدهم ومنهم أخرجهم تارة أخرى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announces, write the record of this servant, record him or her, put them on the list, the guest list, in the highest of records, the best of people. This is where they belong. This is the register of all people. There's two registers. This person is going to be written in, or she's going to be written in Aliyin, the highest and the most praiseworthy. Then return them to the earth, because I decreed that from it I will create them, to it I will return them, and then they will be extracted from it one more time on the Day of Judgment. So he is returned to his body, he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the soul re-enters its body in time to hear the footsteps of those who just buried. It is returned into the grave and hears the footsteps of the people leaving its janazah. That's how long it takes. It's from the moment that your soul is extracted, the moment you die, the time it takes for them to find out, wash you and bury you and put you in the ground. You've traveled the heavens and back, hopefully. And he said, he does, as soon as that soul re-enters that body, two angels come and sit him up. And they ask him, Man Rabbuk, who is your Lord? And he says, Rabbi Allah, my Lord is Allah. And they ask him, Ma Dinuk, what is your religion? What way of life did you follow? And he says, Dini Islam. And they ask him, Ma hadha rajul ladhi bu'itha fikum? Who is this man that was sent amongst you? And he or she says, Huwa Rasulullah, he is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they ask him, Ma ilmuk, how did you know this? Where did this information come from? He says, Qara'ta kitaballah, I read the Quran. I read that letter that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us. I had a relationship with the words of my Creator, and that guided me to all of this. That's how I got here, to be able to say this, to experience this in this fashion, as opposed to the alternative that we'll hear right now. So I believed in it, and I enacted it. This was my way of life. So, an announcement is made that he is telling the truth. This is all true. His truthfulness or her truthfulness is attested to from the heavens. And then يَأْتِيهِ رَجُلٌ حَسَنُ الْوَجْهِ, a man comes to him with a beautiful face, حَسَنُ الثِّيَابِ, beautiful clothing, طَيِّبُ الرِّيحِ, a beautiful scent. And he says, أَبْشِرْ بِالَّذِي يُسِرُّكَ, good news. Good news that will make you happy. And he says, who are you? Your face looks like it's bringing good news. I can tell that you're about to say good news from the moment you walked into this grave. I already know that it's good news from your face. And so he tells him, who are you? Mr. Good News. And he tells him, I'm your righteous actions. So he says, Ya Rabbi aqim as-sa'a hatta arji'u ila ahli wa mali. Oh Allah, start the Day of Judgment so I can go back to my family and my wealth. I'm ready for that reunion. I'm ready to get back. I'm ready for the vacation. I'm done with the work, alhamdulillah. I'm ready to check out. I'm ready to get my reward. I'm ready to cash in the tickets. You know in Chuck E. Cheese, when you go at the end and you give them 50,000 tickets for a plastic ninja that melts in your pocket before you get home. No, that's the whole dunya. The whole dunya is 50,000 Chuck E. Cheese tickets for a cold cup of coffee. This is my fault. You guys gave it to me warm. But that's the metaphor. It's 100% for real. So this person is really cashing in. The jubilation. We all know that feeling that you felt as a kid. But now it's real. Now it won't be interrupted. Now it won't be spoiled. Now you never have to go home. You never have to call it quits. Continue tomorrow. They can finally experience that. So they're saying, let the Day of Judgment start, if that's what it means. Then he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَإِنَّ الْعَبْدَ الْكَافِرِ إِذَا كَانَ فِي انْقِطَاعٍ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَإِقْبَالٍ مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ. As for the disbelieving, another narration, al-abd al-fasiq, the wicked believer, the wicked servant, the wicked human being. And he uses the same exact wording. When it comes time for them to exit this worldly life and enter the hereafter, because it's the same for either way. The wicked and the righteous, when that timer hits 0, neither one of them gets any extra time. Neither one of them decides when to go. Neither one of them has any influence in how they go, in what fashion it will occur. They both performed actions and get to that same moment that Allah decrees irrespectively, without consulting anyone, without having to answer to anyone. And they both follow suit because your body doesn't belong to you. So when Allah decrees it's time's up, the body starts acting like time's up. It starts shutting things down. And that happens to the righteous and the wicked all the same. Angels descend upon him or her, he said, with black faces, dark. With them is a harsh cloth from the hellfire, and some of its tar and its smoke. And they sit around him as far as the eye can see. Could be surrounded by loved ones, people tapping on his forehead, holding on his shoulder, telling him everything's going to be okay. We're all here, holding his hand, squeezing, reassuring. But he sees black faces as far as the eye can see. No reassurance, no comfort. Completely eclipsing his loved ones. Could be a drip of the strongest painkillers. None of it has an effect here. The hereafter is a completely different realm. It's a completely different experience that is completely determined by who we are. It's nothing that can be done. It's like the sister said, the book of deeds is closed at that point. It's now being reread, it's being rewinded and just playing back out in terms of what's happening to us. So he said, they come in this fashion, the angel of death comes with a terrifying look. It sits at his head and it says, أَيَّتُهَا النَّفْسُ الْخَبِيثَةُ أُخْرُجِي إِلَى سَخَطٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَغَضَبٍ O evil, filthy, despicable soul, exit to the anger and the punishment of your Lord. You have nothing to look forward to, but you must exit by hook or crook. You have no say in it. You are coming out, you are being dragged out. So he said, it tries to disperse throughout the body. It tries to anchor itself and hold on for dear life. Literally, the last chance is the only thing I ever knew and I ever experienced. Why would I want to leave? A man asked one of the righteous scholars, why do we hate to die? Why do we hate the mention of the hereafter? Why does this stuff make us anxious and uncomfortable? The scholar said it makes you anxious and uncomfortable, not me. Because you have built everything here and you've completely neglected there. So you hate to move from establishment to neglect, from stability to uncertainty. Naturally, why would you want to move from that which you've built and reinforced and invested in and supported to that which you've never considered and never invested in? He says, you hate it because you've never worked for it. You've never set your eyes on the prize, so there's nothing in store. So the body tries to hold on. It tries to hold on to every nook and cranny. فَيَنْتَزِعُهَا He rips it out. He tears it out of this body. كَمَا يُنْتَزَعُ السَّفُودُ مِنَ الصُّوفِ مَبْلُولٍ Like a thorny bush, a thorny twig is pulled out of wet wool or a wet bush of leaves. If you have a branch that has thorns on it, and it's in wet, not just cloth, but wool, the roughest of cloth, and you yank it out, what's going to happen? It's a very violent, very, very difficult, very, very complicated process. It's brutal. There's sound, there's pain, but it is extracted all the same. Everyone must go at this moment. And he said, he holds it in his hands for the blink of an eye. He's just the extractor. It's not personal. He has no stakes in the game. He has no horses in the race. He doesn't want to hurt you or to help you. He's doing his job. He hands it over to these black-faced angels. They place it in this tar, and they place it in this harsh cloth from Jahannam. May Allah protect all of us. And they begin to ascend. And he said that they don't pass by any group of angels except they say, who is this person? And the angels answer, this is Fulan ibn Fulan, so-and-so, the son or daughter of so-and-so. And they give him the most wicked names. The liar, the cheater, the backbiter, the fornicator, the one who never lowered their gaze, all of it. It's who they were. This is who they were as a title. The summary of their actions. Who they are in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our shortcomings and raise our ranks. Till they get to the end of that first heaven, and they seek entrance, and they are denied. This is as far as you can go. Your existence was only ever about this world. Stay here. Not welcome upstairs. They don't want to see your presence. They don't want to hear your mention. They don't want to smell that scent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no address for this person. return to sender. So it is cast down, he said. And he recited the verse in Surah Al-Araf where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those who disbelieved, لا تفتح لهم أبواب السماء ولا يدخلون الجنة. The gates of the heavens will not be open for them, nor will they ever enter Jannah for all eternity. Period. So this is step one. The gates of the heavens will not be opened in the journey before the judgment that would make you eligible for Jannah. Then he said it is cast down. So the other soul is brought down to its grave. This one is cast down and it falls in a giant free fall. And he recited the verse that those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's as if they are falling from the heavens. I think this is what refers to their journey, the beginning of their journey in the hereafter. Then he says he enters his grave in time to hear the footsteps walking away. And two angels sit him or her up. And they ask him or her, who is your Lord? What is your book? What is your deen? Who was this man? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And with each question, he or she responds, la adri. Words of panic. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not sure. Until they get to, who is this man? He will say or she will say, they said this about him, so I said the same. For the hypocrite, they will say, they said he was a prophet, so I just kind of went with that. Right? The people who feigned belief just to get the upper hand on the Muslims or to plot their demise from within, like in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and until today for some, or those who just kind of were nominally going with it and had not an ounce or a shred of faith in their hearts. They will say they said something, so I said the same. I just went with the flow because it was my culture, because my parents said so. They wouldn't give me a phone if I did it right when I was younger, so I just kind of became who I was. There's no conviction here. There's no true faith. There's no garden blossoming inside me. It's desolate. Or they said he was a terrorist. They said he was a barbarian. They said he was a literate copycat and just drew it all from Judaism and Christianity. So I believed it. Fox News said he was crazy. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So I just went with it. They were trying to throw the blame. And just like it was told to the righteous person, how did you know this? And he will say, I read the book of Allah. She will say, I encountered revelation. I searched for the truth. I conformed. I believed. I submitted. It will be told to this other person, you never went to find out. You never bothered. You never looked. You were indulging day and night, eating, grazing, procreating, and then you died. As if you were created for nothing else. And that is your fault. You had the faculties and the opportunities to not do that. You were not created for that. That was not your purpose. So he said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when the announcement is made that this person is lying, they didn't do their part. It's not that they didn't know. It's not that they couldn't find out. They didn't do their part. So the announcement is made, the objective announcement from the heavens that that's not true. So he said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that the grave constricts upon them until their ribs interlock. And he did this with his hands, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then the angels strike him, such a strike that all the creatures except mankind and the jinn hear it. And then he sees a evil-looking person who shocks him, increases his anxiety, increases his fear, ugly clothing, a horrible stench. And he says, why are you here? What evil are you bringing? I don't want you here. You bring no comfort, you bring no solitude with your presence. And he says, I'm your evil actions. I'm your lies and your deceit. I'm all the evil words you've said, here manifest in a physical being. Here to torment you. You sent me here to wait until you died. I've been here since you performed these actions. Festering, growing, multiplying like bacteria. And then now I'm here with you because you sent me forward before you came here. So upon seeing this, he says, Oh my Lord, do not allow the day of judgment to start. Let this be as bad as it gets. So the Prophet ﷺ showed us these two narratives. Why? And this is the end of the hadith. It's a very long hadith as you've heard. And the Prophet ﷺ is clearly telling us something here. How do you prep for death? You take this narrative and you make it the lens with which you look at every single action. Every single action fits into one of these two narratives. Period. If it doesn't, I don't do it. If it's in the wrong narrative, I don't do it. Only if it fits in that first narrative. It's part of who I am. It's something I indulge in. It's something I'm interested in. That's how we're supposed to constantly remember death. That when I face this moment, sooner than later, what would it look like? when it gets incorporated into that man that keeps me company in the grave, what would it look like? Is it going to make him stink more, make him more unbearable, make him more fearsome? Or is it going to make him more tranquil, more pleasant, more reassuring, more comforting? Salman al-Farsi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, he said, أَضْحَقَنِي ثَلَاث وَأَبْكَانِي ثَلَاث. 3 things made me laugh, and 3 things made me cry. 3 reflections on each side. The things that made me laugh, he said, ضحكت من مؤمن الدنيا والموت يطلبه وغافل لا يغفل عنه وضاحك منه فيه لا يدري أمسخط ربه أم مرضيه. 3 things that amused me. It's not like haha laughing, but I found amusing. The first of them is someone with high hopes in this life and doesn't know that death has his number. Death's coming, but he has hopes for a castle and several homes and all these high hopes. And this isn't a message to have very low aspirations, but it is a message to make sure that your main objectives in life, the highest aspirations, the things that must happen, are only faith related. I don't have to own a home. I could work towards one. I could want one. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a must in my existence to have one. It's not a must to get married. It's not a must to have children. It's not a must to have my own business. It's not a must to be my own boss. All these things, if you make them your goals, knock yourself out. None of them are musts. I cannot exit this life. وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Do not die except in a state of total, complete, sincere submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a must. I cannot ever allow death to come to me and I'm not in a state of complete submission to my Creator. That's the only non-negotiable. Everything else will make do. لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ إِذَا ضَيَعْتَهُ عِوَضٌ وَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ إِذَا ضَيَعْتَهُ عِوَضٌ. Every single thing, if you lose it, every single opportunity can be compensated, could be replaced. Every single hole could be filled. But if you lose Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing will fill that gap. Nothing will make up for that deficiency. Nothing will fulfill that purpose and that objective. So the first thing is someone with high hopes in the dunya while death is seeking him. And the second thing that he found amusing is someone who is heedless while the reality is not heedless of him. Someone could be heedless of all this. Right? Someone who just simply, it's not a bad thing on their part. It's not a detraction from their character, something so horrible that you're heedless about. It could be, but it could be they just never heard it before. It just hasn't reached them yet. Or it could be purposefully heedless that they're indulging and they're lost in dunya. But either way, he's saying someone who, whether you're heedless purposefully or not, the reality is not heedless of you. Meaning all of these things still apply to you. There's a name that the angels are going to say if you died at this moment. There's a scent that will emanate from your soul if you died at this moment. Death knows where you are. In another hadith, even though of disputed narration, of disputed authenticity, it mentions that death visits the homes multiple times a day and observes each individual. Death knows who you are. He knows your face. He knows your name. He knows where you live. What does he observe? The hadith says he sees in each soul a counter, a meter, which is the rizq. So when that meter hits 0, he knows this one's coming with me today. You have an invisible meter hanging on you that says breaths left, heartbeats, counting. One less right now, another one. Just from the start of this talk, we've lost tons of them. Death sees that. And the second that hits 0, just like a farmer plucks the flowers, or a cook, this piece is ready, he just extracts. So he visits, so he's not heedless of you, that's the point of the hadith. He's not unaware of your existence. So we shouldn't be unaware and completely heedless while the reality is not heedless of us. وَضَاحِكُ مِنْهُ فِيهِ, and the one who laughs with his full mouth. You know how some people they guffaw with all their heart, they just let it out. It's not even it doesn't have to be that funny, they're just laughers. You guys know what I'm talking about? There's people like that. If you didn't encounter them, it's just a matter of time. But there's a lot of people like that. It's not a positive quality. It's not haram to laugh. But he's saying here, someone who laughs with their full mouth, they're giving it their all. And that's not the biggest problem though, even though that in of itself has some issues in terms of character, but it's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem, he said, is that he does that while being completely heedless and unaware. Is this laugh, is this enjoyment, is this mockery pleasing to his creator or displeasing? He doesn't care. He's just having a good time. There's people like that. There's no red lines. You could be, the earthquake is a great example. The group chats, for the first few seconds, people are like, oh my God, earth shaking, astaghfirullah, we should all repent, just have to do Palestine. Within 15 minutes, joke started. Not even 15 minutes. That's a red line. If you make a joke out of such a situation, you will never get the reminder. That alarm clock will be hitting and ringing over and over in your life, and you're just hitting snooze each time without even noticing because you're busy laughing. That's what these things are. They're an alarm clock. When Medina shook, Umar gathered all the people and he said, "You guys, someone needs to change their way of life or I'm leaving the city." He said, someone's doing something wrong, not us, not the Sahaba, because we were with the Messenger of Allah and we took things seriously. What are you new people doing? Because I'm not going to stay here living with you for long if this keeps going on. They took it as a reminder. And he knew himself. He said, we never lived this lifestyle that brought these things along. So the reminder is super important, and super important to have these red lines. Don't allow anything to be a joke. Make sure that you take the reminder. Make sure that you laugh, but laugh carefully. Don't be those people that have no red lines. The 3 things that made me cry, he said, now, first one is فراق الأحبة Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa hizbah, being separated from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions. The second thing was the terror of what I'm going to see at the moment of death. What will that look like? The beginning of that journey that we described. He said, I'm terrified of that. That first instance, as the veil is peeled back and you see reality. He's saying, I'm so scared of that moment. It makes me cry, anticipating, experiencing it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَشَفْنَا عَنْكَ غِطَاءَكَ. Today we lifted the veil. At the moment of death meaning. Now you see things as they really are. Now the reality is apparent to you. Now for the first time you receive the only ever confirmation ever since you existed about who you really are. The lifetime of deeds, did they amount to anything? You find out at this moment as the veil is lifted. So he says, I think about that a lot. And the last thing he said, وَالْوَقُوفُ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ حِينَ لَا أَدْرِي إِلَى النَّارِ انصِرَافِي أَمْ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. And the third thing, the reflection that made me cry, is the anticipation of the standing between the hands of the Lord of the worlds, where I will not know to Jannah will be my resolution or to the hellfire. That final moment before eternity is something I think about, he said. How much stronger would our faith be if some of this narrative was something we would call on in moments of difficulty? I'm not going to remember this whole lecture. You're not going to remember all the details of the hereafter. But what you need to do is have enough of it in your immediate recall, so that when someone says, here, drink this, smoke this, come here, you can say, no. There's something at risk here. When someone says, you don't need to do that, you look silly, it's hot, it's cold, everyone's watching us, we look silly, this is the mall, whatever it is. You can think for a moment, no, none of this is real. This is all an illusion. There's a bigger picture. I'm preparing for life. I'm taking on, I'm filling my knapsack for a journey. These guys are, this is a pit stop. Everyone here, you know when you get to a pit stop, like when you're driving, and you get to like the, for example, like a turnpike, every like 10 miles, there's like one named after Albert Einstein or whatever. No, they're all like authors, English authors, whatever, you get the idea. People do whatever there, right? Because it's like everyone's in a pit stop, so no one looks like who's eating what or what time of day it is. It's like the airport. Like this guy's eating pizza at 9 a.m., no one cares. Drinking alcohol at 9 a.m., no one cares either, because it's an airport, right? The Sudanese, they have, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for the Muslims struggling in Sudan, Allahumma ameen. They have a parable, is that the word? A saying that whoever's not in their country might as well walk around naked. Meaning like, oh, that's a bit too extreme, but the idea is that no one knows you. If everyone says, hey, look at this guy, you're like, whatever, they don't know me. Not very good advice, but you get the idea. How did we get here? Oh yeah, thank you. So it's temporary. That's going to give you the fuel to have the ability to react appropriately. It won't get to you. They can say whatever they want. They're all on a journey too. They're going somewhere else. Like, who cares? I'm never going to see them again. It's almost like that. So he's able to reflect over these moments because he has the volume. He's heard about Jannah, he's heard about Nar, he's heard about the moment of death, he's heard about the angels, he's cognizant of the angels at all times, he's heard about the heavens, he's heard about the meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's heard the Prophet say that whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet him or her. He's heard all these narrations, so they're just constantly spinning in his head, not all at once, but one of them always is. And so he always has that connection. So he shares these deep reflections that we can spend hours talking about. He's able to connect others from how connected he is. And that should be all of our goals, that we're constantly remember death. Not in the sense, and I've heard someone say this before, like death, Islam is a gloomy religion. You guys think about death all the time. How do you have breakfast? How do you go to parties? How do you have weddings? It's not what's called here, right? To be in a permanently gloomy state. But what's called here is that in the midst of my enjoyment, in the midst of my living, whenever temptation comes to do something haram, no, now I can snap back. I'll never get lost in that. Whenever an obligation is due, right now, I'm always able to connect. I'm always able to lock in, get focused. Because whenever someone tries to distract me with an occurrence or some kind of glitter, I'll say, no, this is going to wrap up before we know it. I'm going to have to answer for this. I live for something else. I'm just preparing for life. So it's very, very important and incumbent upon us to connect regularly and in a meaningful fashion. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to constantly remind us of our appointment with Him, to instill in our hearts the softness and the conviction and the devotion to constantly seek a path to connect with Him, to remember that we will wrap up this life before we know it and present our deeds before Him. So we ask Him to accept from us and forgive our shortcomings. Jazakumullah khairan everyone. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Sallallahu barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them, inshallah. Sorry, I kept standing then sitting. You have to alter the camera. I have several problems. I was going to say a problem, but I was like, that's not very accurate. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you retell the story of the box? I understood it, but I also didn't understand it.
Story of the box. I know what you're talking about. The Prophet ﷺ, he sat with the companions and he drew a box on, it had like a board or something that could work. I don't know. He drew a box in the sand. And then in the box, he started in the center. He takes a line and he draws it like this, going outside the box. So he said, in this the dot in the center, that's humans. That's everybody. This line that makes the perimeter of the square, like these lines, these 4 lines, he said that's your lifespan, that's death. And the line that goes out, that's your hopes and dreams. That's like the stuff you prepare for. That's the goals you have in this dunya. They will always extend past your actual lifespan. Everybody, no one dies saying, this is it, I'm done. Everyone thinks that they can plan for tomorrow. And I've visited dying people. Sometimes they'll say, we'll talk about this tomorrow. SubhanAllah, like, and everyone around them says, like, yeah, inshallah, we'll talk about it tomorrow, whether they're Muslim or not. I've seen both. And they say, yeah, tomorrow. And I'm just like, I don't want to be that guy, but it's like the doctors are like saying any minute now. So why is everyone planning for tomorrow, still to know? And I assume part of it is just like, not wanting to say, I'm not judging them. But the point of it is that every single human being will have unfulfilled plans. Without exception. That's what the Prophet was saying. For some people it will be high hopes and huge dreams and they're just getting started. And for other people it will be like the normal stuff that every human being is planning. Like tomorrow I'll go to the mechanic and next week I'll go visit whatever, and none of that will come to fruition. Right? They say that one day the buttons you do will be undone by somebody else. Right? It will be undone by the washer. Your rings will be taken off by somebody one day. All these things will be done for you one day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us a good end. Allahumma ameen. Please. Yes.
So somebody was asking, to what extent should we be focusing on marriage with the knowledge that this is something that will help our akhirah?
So that happens a lot with these kind of talks that we need to, I'll repeat the question. To what extent should I focus on something like marriage in the midst of all this, basically, right? So the balance, it's important to have that balance, and we understand this is a talk about death, so obviously we're hyper-focused and we went through a lot of narrations particular to that. But with that being said, the formula that we follow is the formula left behind by our Prophet ﷺ. And these companions that we just quoted. We'll see that they had families, they had businesses, they went to work, they had farms, so they were planting for hours a day. That doesn't mean that they were neglectful of the hereafter. That doesn't mean that they didn't care about death. In fact, they're the people who care the most. Everything that we just said was quotes from them. So they're the same people who quoted all of this. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا, don't forget your share of this worldly life. You have a share of it. Clothing and shelter and food and drink and a family. And that's the share that you must use. It's a tool. It's a vehicle to the hereafter, to all of this. And in addition, it's part of the rules of life. You cannot live without shelter, you cannot live without clothing, you cannot live without society. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made these all part of the system, part of worshiping actually. Because if you do all of these things, these normal human experiences like eating, drinking, marriage, procreation, buying and selling, if you do all of them according to the rubric that Allah revealed, according to the regulations that His Prophet ﷺ taught, then all of this becomes worship. So it's no longer like, a distraction from death or it's running away from the hereafter. No, it's a vehicle that will help you get to the hereafter. So anything that you do sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes worship, even if it's not ritualistic worship like salah or reading Quran or dua. So get married, do it with the right intention, that becomes worship. Have children with the right intention, they become in your scales of good deeds on the day of judgment. Feed somebody with a good intention, and that regular meal that you've been doing anyway because you need to eat to survive, all of a sudden becomes a hasana that you get rewarded for with Allah on the day of judgment. So always tweak your intention to get as much good out of it as possible, then everything becomes an act of worship. And then there's always everyday stuff that must be done if you don't tweak your intention, it must be done, like eating, drinking, sleeping, having work. So that doesn't contradict, doesn't make you a chaser of pleasures or someone who's distracted from the hereafter. Just make sure that you never prioritize that over the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happens when to do that you must disobey Allah? That's where you will say, no, I don't care. I'm going to drop that. I won't disobey Allah for this because this is a vehicle, this is a tool to get me to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if it's getting me further, it's not fulfilling its purpose. That's where that determination and that decision must be made, which will show whether you are neglectful of all of this or not just simply enacting it. Yes, sir, please.
I have a question. Since we're talking about the fact that we need to acknowledge that we're all going to die one day, and a constant reminder of that. With everything that's going on in Palestine, I'm sure that part of our obligation is to, of course, live ahead of Palestinians. Other than that, what should we, as young or as the youth of people living in New York, be doing more helpful, not more helpful, things that are helpful other than making dua for Palestine?
Excellent question. What else can we do to help the people in Palestine? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them victory. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fortify their hearts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deplete the resources of their enemies. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala break their resolve. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disperse their ranks. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deplete their resources and make every single penny that they invest in this cause a source of regret for them in this world and the hereafter. Allahumma ameen. With that being said, our duty towards our brothers and sisters all over the world, and specifically in Palestine, is a huge one. The first thing that you can do is be concerned all the time. Multiple instances of joy and jubilation and celebration, and people like Nuruddin Zengi or Salahuddin Ayyubi were not happy. People asked them why. There's a victory on the battlefield, there's some kind of progression of the cause, which was reconquering Jerusalem, liberating, that was their cause. So they're working towards it, we got a step closer. So people are happy, and they would say, no, there's nothing to be happy about. Al-Aqsa is still a prisoner. It's still a prisoner of war. So I'm ashamed, one of them said, I'm ashamed for Allah to see me smiling while there's Muslims being subjugated in the Holy Lands. So the first thing is to be concerned about it. This is a life concern now. This is a life mission. I don't sleep or rest or enjoy peacefully. It's always a thought on my mind. On Eid and weddings, it's something that I'm connected to permanently until it's resolved. That's number one. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is not concerned with the affairs of the Muslims is not one of them. It's doing them lip service. And the least you can do is be concerned, be kept up at night by this concern. So that's number one. Number two is that concern should drive you. The first and foremost obligation is to better yourself. A lot of people say, oh man, I'm another person saying, what's me praying have to do with Palestine? Everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not give victory to an ummah that is distant from Him. The victory is through the connection with Him. Umar ibn Khattab, when he sent Sa'd ibn Waqqas to fight the Persians, one of the world's superpower, he told him, you're going to fight a superpower. A group of people who have ranks and technology and animals and things that we've never seen before. They've been fighting the Roman Empire for the last 800 years before we were a blip on the map. So these are fearsome people, and none of that matters. As long as you're superior in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said the minute that your sins resemble theirs, then their technology and their ranks and their animals, all that will come into play and you will be decimated. But if your status is higher in the sight of Allah, then none of that matters. None of that plays a role in victory. So earn status in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's a lifelong journey. That's not an individual journey, it's a community one, that's a family one. We all must be checking out all the boxes in front of our Creator. So when we say, please help, He sends the express. That's how it works. The third thing, after being concerned all the time, bettering yourself, Islamically speaking, the third thing is to gain knowledge. You must understand this correctly. The amount of people who have no idea what's going on or the history of the conflict, and I'm not saying to be some deep dive researching, TED Talk, they give a TED Talk about it, but read a couple of books, and that's the first stop for most people. That's where it ends. When they hear that 5-letter word, 5, B-O-O-K-S, yeah, 5. They just, I can't read. Is there a YouTube video about it? There are. But if you are not concerned enough about these tens of thousands of people being slaughtered to sit down and read something that's not, Harry Potter, you're the problem. You're the problem, 100%. And if someone hears all this, they say, no, man, what do we do? You're also the problem. Because if you haven't done all that, because you think there's something else that you can do, there's any other physical change you can affect, there's some army you can join and be a meaningful soldier in, it's impossible. You're too dumb. You're too useless. You're too distant from the means of victory, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What service can you present to the ummah like that? Nothing. Read something like, Palestine is something colonial by Dr. Hazim Bazian, or there's a bunch of things by The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. These are great books to start with. I didn't even read all of them. I have them and you just skim through them, you get a huge idea, and then put them on your reading list. But then you just get the general idea that completely changes how you approach the whole situation. Anyone who doesn't have that background info is very unlikely to have the fortitude to do what it needs to keep going to change the situation, because this is going to happen in a week or two. Right? This is something that might need decades. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is His own time around, won't put a time on it, won't have the audacity to do that, but something that definitely won't happen to people who are unconcerned, not pious, and uneducated. So those 3 steps should take all of your effort, and the 4th one that I'll add is find out what role you can play. Every single person has a skill set. Every single person has a career path. How does that skill set, how does that career path, how does you being a doctor, or you being good at social media, or you being good at art, how does Palestine benefit from that? That's a question you must answer. It's a life goal for you to answer. If Palestine and the Muslim Ummah has no share of your career, of your hobbies, change hobbies and change your career. Muslim Ummah does not need you, you're dead weight. So I'd say these 4 steps should be enough of a concern to keep the Ummah very busy. If we do those things right, I'm 100% confident that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expand our ability to carry a heavier load and enact a bigger effect of change worldwide. Inshallah. Let's do one more on each side and call it a night. It's past my bedtime. Go ahead.
So somebody asked, is it normal to look forward to death, not in a suicidal way, more of want to go to Allah and start your actual journey?
Paging social services. No, that's actually the first chapter of this book. This is a great book. They have it in English, but it's like half of the book. It's like a bridge version. It's probably less than half of the book. You miss out on most of it, but that's actually the PDF that I found. There might be a better version of it online that is has a better translation or a more thorough one. So the one that I found again is less than half the book, but it'll still benefit if you look it up. It's called the Tadhkira, the reminder. في أحوال الموتى وأمور الآخرة, the reminder regarding the affairs of the hereafter, the affairs of the dead, and the affairs of the conditions of the dead and the affairs of the hereafter. If you search Imam al-Qurtubi's reminder, it should come up. Qurtubi, Qurtubi, and if you search Qurtubi's reminder, it should come up. Again, the PDF that I found in English was not thorough at all, like I missed huge chunks of the book, but it's still a decent reminder regarding this topic from A to Z, meaning death, and then the journey of the soul, the grave, the day of judgment, and then the judgment, then Jannah and Nar. He talks about all of that, the signs of the day of judgment as well. One of the first chapters is, should you ask for death? Should you say, I want to die? And then he mentions how there's plenty of hadith that say no, you shouldn't. Except in certain situations, as the Prophet ﷺ taught us, where if you fear a fitna, a tribulation in your deen, that he said here, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تقوم الساعة حتى يمر الرجل بقبر الرجل فيقول يا ليتني مكانه. The day of judgment will not come, meaning it's one of the signs of the day of judgment. It will not come until a man would pass by a grave and say, I wish I was in his place. And you see that with a lot of people nowadays, like with slightest misfortune, they're like, oh man, like, just kill me now, right? People say stuff like that. And of course they don't fully mean it, but it became enough of a thing where people kind of say it in like, difficult situations, and it's almost serious, where they say, I wish I died, I was so embarrassed that I wish I died, and things like that. So over the smallest of issues, people, and then some people really kill themselves, right? God forbid. With that being said, he mentions here that the Prophet ﷺ himself said, Allahumma inni as'aluka fi'l al-khayrat wa tark al-munkarat wa hubb al-masakin wa idha aradta fi an-nas fitnatan faqbidni ilayka ghayra maftun. He would say, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Oh Allah, I ask you to allow me to perform righteous actions, and to abandon evil ones, and to instill in me the love of the poor people, and that if you intend for the people a tribulation, to try the people, to put them through a very difficult test or a calamity, then take my soul without putting me to trial. So he mentions here, would be the exception, which is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection from a trial, out of fear that it would try your faith. If that's something that's happening, then say, Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, take me while you are pleased with me, take me while I'm safe, take me before I fall short. There's nothing wrong with that, but the default is not to wish for death. So then we have the hadith here that says, whoever wishes to meet Allah, then Allah wishes to meet him or her. So Aisha told the Prophet ﷺ, no one wants to die. But he said, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is at the moment of death, this process that we just described with the long hadith, it becomes apparent to you, you see it. So the second you start to see it, the second you start to see these scenes play in front of you, he said the believer sees that and it makes him eager, like, okay, things are going well, things are pretty, things are enticing, things are reassuring and comforting, it's not terrifying. So they are excited to exit to the hereafter and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while the wicked person or the disbeliever, upon seeing the evil scenes that he mentioned in the other hadith, he said, then they despise to die, they despise to move forward, they wish to remain here, and that's what the hadith means. So, generally speaking, we should not wish for death, because in another hadith he told us, if you're a bad person, what's going to happen? If you keep living, what's going to happen? And you're a bad person. You might stop. You might snap out of it. And if you're a good person, you're going to do more. Opportunity to do more. So he says, don't wish for death, Allah, and just assume that that's what's going to happen. These two possibilities. No, Allah will give me an opportunity to repent. No, Allah wants me to crescendo into a huge, display of service and sacrifice for my community, and He wants me to go out on a high. He doesn't want me to go out just here. He wants me to go out here. That's what you should assume and move towards always, as bad or as difficult as things may seem. Never to wish for death. Brothers, gotta be fair on both sides, so they don't call me whatever's the opposite of a misogynist. What is it? Not for real? Say it again slower. Misandrist? Sounds like someone's name. That's misandrist. Anybody else? Alright, Jazakumullah khairan everyone for your attentiveness. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make death always at the forefront of our minds and hearts and allow us to prepare accordingly. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Sallallahu wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sheikh Mohammad Badawy for a very deep and hard-hitting talk today. I hope we all benefited. Don't forget it's the last odd night tonight, so if you're feeling inspired, make some dua, take advantage. And inshallah, we have a good conclusion to your Ramadan, and see you at Astoria Park for Eid, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.